it's producer Mark at KCMO Talk Radio, and if you're an NFL or college football fan, check out my weekly sports betting podcasts. Search College Pick'em Program or Sunday Sharps wherever you get your podcasts, and hit that subscribe button for my weekly picks, including the Chiefs, Mizzou, Kansas, and K-State. Now, here's the Monday in the Morning podcast.
It is 6:05 as we get it rolling. A fresh new week here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And yes, it is also Veterans Day, and we will have some special conversations throughout the morning with our good friends over at the Battle Within. They're an incredible organization here in Kansas City, helping veterans, helping first responders right here in Kansas City on their journey back from PTSD. So I cannot wait to share those stories with you throughout the morning here on a Veterans Day Monday. But there is a lot happening right now, obviously, in this town and around the country. So we're going to keep you abreast of it all this morning, including, how about them Chiefs? Oh, my goodness. That game yesterday. I just rewatched the replay of Leo Chanel. Just bull rush the guy on the left side of the line, Mark. Holy cow.
That guy tried to block Leo Chanel and George Karlaftis at the same time, and it did not go well for him.
No, it didn't. And Leo just blasted through the left side of that line for the Broncos, blocks the field goal, which would have won Denver the game and, of course, ended the undefeated season. But instead, the Chiefs stay undefeated. They get the win yesterday, and oh my goodness, how many other ways can you find to win a game? 16-14, the Chiefs are 9-0, and I want to play what it sounded like on TV from Kevin Harlan on CBS.
Kick to win it. Oh! Blocked! The Chiefs have won! The Chiefs have won!
There you go. That was Kevin Harlan, CBS, with the call yesterday on the TV side. And we went yesterday to the game for Kate's birthday. And right before the kick, she's like, so what are the odds he makes it? I'm like, yeah, 98%, probably. I mean, these guys do these in their sleep. 30-yarders, nothing to it. But we have have my in-laws in town. So I'm like, well, we don't need to rush out of here. Like, if we had a babysitter, I'd probably be standing in the back of the stadium just ready to scoot on out. And there were people leaving. Not a lot, but there were people walking up and getting ready to head out. And
I was leaving. And I was in my front room.
But I said, let's just stay here. We're not rushing home to a babysitter. Let's see how it plays out. And then I'll tell you what, that reaction right there in that moment was unlike anything I had seen and been a part of when it comes to being a sports fan in a stadium at any given point in time because of how unexpected it was there, John.
How about Mike Dana?
Yeah.
Air quotes. Yeah, that was the call, and then Bill Cowher repeated it on the thing. I'm going, no, I don't think Mike's in there. And so then it took me a while to determine who did it because was it Karlaftis, was it Chanel? There's a couple of great videos. There's one that's just got the field mic, and so you hear the kick and then his block, and it's like,
yeah.
And it's like, wow, that his block was louder than the kick impact.
That is amazing. I got to find that. That was incredible.
That was a good one.
Yeah, but obviously I was listening to the post game driving home, and the entire coaching staff just raving about Leo and how he doesn't get enough credit, and then he comes in yesterday, and no one's going to forget that.
The other one I found that's classic is the Broncos call.
Oh, yes. That one is horrible. Yes, I heard that last night.
I'll go fish the audio out of it. We don't have that.
Let's get the audio for that. We'll play it maybe after we talk to our good buddy Kendall Gammon next hour.
That's
oh, my gosh. Those guys sounded like they were burying a family member. Oh, that was a thing of beauty. Kick blocked. And then there's just silence.
Long pause of silence.
Yes. Oh, they were
Which was followed by the obvious statement of the year. I'm lost for words.
Yeah.
Right, or something to that effect.
Yes.
And the Broncos sideline just stood there for like 30 seconds. They didn't know what to do. They were like, did this really happen?
Oh, they were shell-shocked. Oh, they were totally stunned. So the Chiefs are 9-0. They figure out another way to win the game. And it is just a good time to be in this town and obviously be a fan of this team. Now they go to Buffalo next week, which will be a tough matchup. And that, of course, will be the CBS 325 slot on Sunday. Meantime, we are watching very closely what's going to be happening this week in Washington, D.C. with Senate Majority Leader. So we know it's not going to be Mitch McConnell. He said he's not doing it anymore. And it appears like there are three guys in the mix. There is John Thune, who is a senator out of South Dakota. There is John Cornyn, a senator out of Texas. And then there's Rick Scott, a senator from Florida. Rick Scott was actually on this radio station 1 hour ago on the Fox News Rundown 5 a.m. show, which you should totally listen to if you're an early morning person because, well, you don't want to listen to the other station in town or other stations in town that are going to give you the left-wing propaganda nonsense. So Fox News does a good job with its 5 a.m. programming here on KCMO. They had Rick Scott on to obviously talk about this Senate Majority Leader race, and Rick Scott would be my preference. If I could pick between those three, it'd be Rick Scott. Business guy, governor of Florida, has now had 6 years in the Senate. Solid, good, hardworking conservative. Not somebody who's just going to try to get on TV for the sake of getting on TV. He's not a bomb thrower by any stretch of the imagination. Rick Scott's a serious guy. But he is more conservative when it comes to a lot of issues than the other two. But that's not the only reason I pick him. I pick him also because I think he's most likely to further the agenda that Donald Trump is trying to achieve. And he's done a lot of those things like balance budgets in Florida as the governor. I mean, like when you've been a governor, I always like people who have spent time as governor because they've actually done stuff. And Rick Scott has done it in private life and in public life. But there's a big fight brewing, and it started on this show on Friday when Josh Hawley came out and made his endorsement for Senate Majority Leader.
You know, I've decided I'm going to vote for John Cornyn from Texas. And the reason is a couple-fold. Number one, I think that Cornyn will work very closely and effectively with President Trump. We were just talking a minute ago. I saw the tail end of the first Trump term. I saw how Mitch McConnell obstructed much of Trump's agenda. And that just cannot happen again. And I believe that Cornyn will get the Senate working. I believe he will work hand in glove with President Trump to
So that was Josh Hawley and some of what he had to say on the show on Friday. And that sent social media into a tizzy when he talked about supporting John Cornyn. Now, what I said on Friday, right after it happened, because our text line blew up, social media blew up, was that if Donald Trump doesn't want John Cornyn, if Donald Trump doesn't think that John Cornyn is going to support his movement and work well with him the next 4 years, he should say something immediately. Donald Trump has not done that yet, which signals to me maybe there's something brewing behind the scenes in the sense that if Trump's not highly offended by John Cornyn out of Texas or John Thune out of South Dakota, I'm not going to be right now. I'm not going to freak out for the sake of it because Trump understands he's got an ability right now to get a lot of things done over a very short period of time, but he needs the right leadership in there. I can't imagine Cornyn or Thune really pushing back against Trump because of the mandate that he just got last week. This is not 2016 where some of these guys and gals are like, flash in the pan, he'll be gone, and we'll move back to the way things were. Those days are over. They can't really operate under that pretense anymore. So with that being the case, I still have a lot of optimism that if Trump's not freaking out over Thune or Cornyn, I'm not going to do it yet. But if I had my druthers, I would pick Rick Scott of these three guys. Why would Josh Hawley like John Cornyn? Well, you heard him lay out some of the case. If you missed it, you can hear the interview on our podcast from last week. But Cornyn has raised a lot of money for a lot of people. He raised over $30 million this past cycle, and he's raised $400 million over his career. I'm not saying that's why people should get jobs in Washington, D.C. It's obviously not why they should get jobs in Washington, D.C. But it is naive to think that that is not part of why people end up getting the jobs that they end up getting. Pete Mundo on KCMO. Good morning. Happy Veterans Day. We're going to keep it rolling throughout the morning with some great stories from our friends at the Battle Within. Brian Sweeney, the Royals pitching coach, will be here in 20 minutes to talk about his role, his involvement, and much more, along with the executive director, Justin Hoover, on 95.7 FM. I don't know what happened. There were some people missing from some of the Sunday shows that I was watching yesterday. Of course, it was great to just bask in, and I would bathe in some of the crocodile tears that I saw on the Sunday shows yesterday, but I couldn't make it happen. But anyway, they had on ABC This Week, and they had John Carl hosting the show. And I don't know if it's usually Snuffleupagus. That would be George Stephanopoulos. I don't know if it's usually him or not. I thought that he would have been the guy the Sunday after the election who would have been hosting ABC This Week. But they had John Carl on there. Tough spot for him. I'm watching his open to the show yesterday, and one thing really stood out to me. We know that demographically, things shifted all over the board to the right in 49 out of 50 states and Washington, D.C. They all moved to the right from 2020, and they moved to the right in some of the traditionally bluest parts of these blue states. Deep New York, California, Washington, D.C., places like that. So take a listen to John Carl and how he explains in his open that some of the furthest left policies were rejected in some of the bluest parts of the country. And then we can tie that back to what happened here in the Kansas City area.
He also made significant gains in some of the most democratic places in the country, doing better in places like Brooklyn, New Jersey, and Chicago. And in deep blue California, Donald Trump is on track to do better than any Republican in 2 decades. And he was running against a Californian. California voters also rejected liberal policies on taxes, rent control, and crime. They voted overwhelmingly to approve Proposition 36, which imposes tougher penalties for shoplifting and drug possession. Both the mayor of San Francisco and the liberal district attorney in Los Angeles were voted out, a rejection of liberal policies, particularly on crime, in some of the most liberal jurisdictions in the United States.
A lot of us have said that things just have to get bad enough for some people to wake up. And they clearly did in California last week. California, whether it was the national races, the federal races, moved to the right. Donald Trump did better in California than he's ever done. And then you look at some of the things that were on the ballot in that state. Taxes, rent control, crime, all the issues, and a lot of the candidates moved from way out in left field to the right. In San Francisco, you heard him mention the mayor. You have the DA in L.A. who got blown out, who was just absolutely awful. So all those things moved to the right. People moved way to the right on the issue of crime, in particular, in some of the worst hit areas in the country, because they realized that in the wake of 2020, these soft on crime policies are no way to govern a civilized society and run a civilized society. You just can't do it, right? The dumb people who came up with the ideas of defund the police have been put back, hopefully, into their little box and will never come out again. I'm sure they will, because we have a short-term memory, but they deserve to never be heard from ever again. This notion that low-level crimes are A-OK, we shouldn't bother prosecuting them, well, that's been failed everywhere it's tried, including here in Kansas City. Now, Jean Peters Baker, who is the sitting prosecutor in Jackson County, she saw the writing on the wall, and she decided that she was going to step away and not run for re-election this year. What happened is that the Democrat Melissa Johnson beat Tracy Chappell, who was the Republican in this race, both black women, by about 16 points. Now, that is closer than the margin was with Jean Peters Baker a few years ago, but clearly in Jackson County, heavily Democratic county, they elected to go ahead with another 4 years of a Democrat in that seat. But if you listened to Melissa Johnson, what you would have heard is somebody who at least understood the moment. Like, I don't really care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican when it comes to prosecuting crime. That really shouldn't matter, right? Prosecuting criminals who break the law should not be about whether you have an R or a D next to your name. So that's why I'm hopeful that with Melissa Johnson in the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, it can't get any worse than it was under Jean Peters Baker. That makes me hopeful, and hopefully if you're a Jackson County resident, that makes you somewhat hopeful as we start off the week here on KCMO. But I obviously have to see it to believe it. and Melissa Johnson will be tested right away as to how tough she is going to be on crime. I hope that this is not a situation, because she said some very good things on this show. I hope this is not a situation of somebody who simply said what she wanted to say based on who her audience was, because it's a dangerous road to go down. When you look what's happened around the country, in the bluest cities in America, people rejected progressive approaches to crime. They said no thanks. They're not interested. They want no part of the progressive approach to criminal justice. They tried it and it failed in some of the bluest cities in the country. So I've got to believe that Melissa Johnson, who had the backing of Quentin Lucas, he was obviously her biggest supporter. She is not somebody who is getting to where she's getting without the help of Quentin Lucas. So I'd like to think that they both came together and said, you know what, maybe we didn't knock Gene Peters Baker like we should have publicly, but we are going to do things much differently. That is my hope, because Quentin Lucas also has to realize that his legacy depends on it. He has 2 years left to really get this crime under control. He has 2 more full years as the mayor of Kansas City, and then he's done. And I will say this, he is also stuck here. He has no choice. He's not getting a job in D.C. Donald Trump ain't hiring him. He was hoping on the Kamala deal, and that obviously did not come to fruition. And he said as much last week on the show, basically admitting he will be mayor until 2027. So his legacy is on the line the next couple of years, in part with what happens with the sports teams, the Chiefs and the Royals, but then also in part what happens with crime. He has overseen the deadliest few years in Kansas City, Missouri history, setting record after record when it comes to homicides in this town. He has a chance to turn that around with his hand-picked prosecutor. And while they may try to do this little dance where they don't offend the progressive movement, if there's one thing we learned coming out of last week, the progressive movement on things like crime and gender ideology and race identity is dead. They can offend them. This is still Kansas City. This is not Los Angeles. And even Los Angeles said we've had enough. So they don't have to be outwardly pushy about it. They can absolutely, and they should absolutely, bring back common sense criminal justice policies, prosecuting low-level crimes, and getting that relationship back to where it needs to be with law enforcement in this town, and tell the uber progressives in Kansas City to pound sand. Their movement got smoked last week. And that is hopefully what their approach is going to be. All right, let's get to the good from the weekend. Now, this wasn't actually good, but the fact that it had to happen was good. And that is Saturday Night Live and their cold open. Oh, man, they were distraught. They were really, really upset. I mean, it's, oh, gosh, you really hate to see it. It's like, it's so sad to have to watch SNL try to still be funny while also being really upset and knowing deep down they are just absolutely distraught. But, we're going to make it happen. They're going to be okay, right? And the cold open included Kansas City's own Heidi Gardner. I wish she would spend more time out here to have a better understanding of what the hell just happened in this country. But apparently, I guess her house that she has here is just a way of pretending like she still has connections to Kansas City. I don't know what else to say. But she's part of this SNL cold open that is still secretly, and not even secretly, outwardly mocking Donald Trump and the 70-plus million people who voted for him, gave him an overwhelming electoral college win, winning all 7 swing states, and also winning the popular vote by millions as well. So here's the SNL cold open.
On Tuesday, Americans went to the polls and elected Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States.
To many people, including many people watching this show right now, the results were shocking and even horrifying.
Donald Trump, who tried to forcibly overturn the results of the last election, was returned to office by an overwhelming majority.
This is the same Donald Trump who openly called for vengeance against his political enemies.
And now, thanks to the Supreme Court, there are no guardrails.
Nothing to protect the people who are brave enough to speak out against him.
And that is why we at SNL would like to say to Donald Trump, we have been with you all along.
We have never wavered in our support of you, even when others doubted you.
Every single person on this stage believed in you.
Every single person on this stage voted for you.
Because we see ourselves in you. We look at you and think, that's me.
That's the man I want my future children to look up to.
Oh, they're doing the babysitter thing again, aren't they? See, they're mocking you. They're mocking us. They're mocking the 70-plus million Americans who just gave this guy a decisive victory by doing the whole thing like, oh, we see ourselves in you. They still don't understand why the guy connects with tens of millions of Americans the way he does. And it's not just what he does to connect with them. It's the way that your preferred candidates and the insanity of your policies, like not just admitting that boys should not compete against girls in sports, completely alienated tens of millions of Americans. And the whole thing of, oh my gosh, well, there's no protection for people that are going to speak out against them. Are you kidding me? Like, were you in a coma from 2017 on when, yeah, Trump would say things and tweet things about people on television who knocked him and mocked him, but nothing ever really happened. In fact, nothing did happen. So were you not around for that? Do you want to just pretend like it didn't happen? I don't know. But this whole notion of, oh, man, we're in danger now. Oh, we better watch our backs. It's going to get ugly around here because we're dissenters of Donald J. Trump. Please.
They're the resistance, Pete.
Oh, I know. But it's so funny because I thought back to 8 years ago when SNL did another cold open after Donald Trump won the first time around. And this was Kate McKinnon singing Hallelujah. I just wonder when these goobers are going to get back to some comedy on SNL.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Yes.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I'm not giving up, and neither should you.
Oh.
And live from New York, it's Saturday night.
That was Kate McKinnon back in 2016, dressed in her Hillary Clinton pantsuit, singing Hallelujah after Donald Trump won the election. Oh, my gosh. So when does the comedy begin again? I'm trying to figure that out on Saturday Night Live because they keep embarrassing themselves. They had Kamala on last week. They thought it was going to be this big, grandiose, rollout into the presidency on Tuesday. And then what do instead? They get their butts kicked, and they have no idea why. And then they do this incredibly awkward cold open about how they're going to be under attack in Donald Trump's America. My gosh. Tell me you're out of touch without telling me you're out of touch, for crying out loud. It's embarrassing. This is exactly why you lost. Exactly why you lost. Okay, that was the good from the weekend. I mean, it wasn't good, but it was good because it had to play out the way it did. So that's why I made it the good. The bad. This is moving on social media, TikTok in particular. The blue bracelet movement. You guys catch this? Women who voted for Kamala Harris in the presidential election have come up with a plan to let people know they didn't vote for Donald Trump. They want to brag about voting for a loser, I guess.
The signaling continues.
Yes. The blue bracelet movement is going viral on TikTok, with Harris supporters vowing to wear a blue friendship bracelet in public that signifies they didn't vote for Donald Trump. Let me see those wrists in there, boys. Please hold those wrists up. Okay, I just want to make sure. Any blue bracelets get you fired around here, but okay.
I guess we should put Canada on guard that people coming in wearing a blue bracelet not to really be feared. It's just a symbolic gesture.
That's exactly right. Oh, my gosh. Okay. So they are going to wear blue bracelets. Say that one 10 times in a row. Blue bracelets in the weeks ahead. in a sign of solidarity that they voted for a loser in Kamala Harris.
Don't we already know who they are?
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, as if the Subaru, the bumper sticker, the sign on the front porch, the
furrowed brow.
Yeah. All the other things that are going to be dead giveaways. But I guess just in case you weren't sure, the virtue signaling must continue. The virtue signal tour must continue on. The one thing I'll say, I guess, is this beats them wearing their pussy hats back in 2016, 2017.
Yes, so.
Hey, you don't dump me for that, Mark. That's what they called them. Don't forget, it was 2017. It was called, the people behind it called it the Pussy Hat Project. It was a grassroots movement to flood the National Mall with millions of handmade, cat-eared knit hats dubbed pussy hats in a show of solidarity and support. I'm reading it right now from CNN.com, January 27th of 2017. Headline, Pussy Hat Project tops off Women's March on Washington. So I guess I'll take the bracelets over the hats. I'll say that much.
May have to get a Trump watch for my wrist now.
Get him a try.
If that's how we're signaling.
Yeah.
I'll get the shoes.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now the ugly from the weekend. FEMA. Have you seen this story on FEMA? A FEMA supervisor told disaster relief workers in Florida to avoid homes with signs supporting President-elect Donald Trump. The agency confirmed this late last week. FEMA official Marnie Washington, reading this from the New York Post, conveyed verbally and in a Microsoft Teams chat used by relief workers canvassing Lake Placid homes ravaged by Hurricane Milton, saying, avoid homes advertising Trump. Washington wrote in a best practices memo to employees. The order was the second bullet point in a list instructing workers not to go anywhere alone, practicing de-escalation, stay hydrated, follow the rules, and avoid Trump signs. If there's ever another sign that we need a reset when it comes to our relationship with our bureaucracies, this is another case in point right here.